It tears me down because I think about as a child when we had fire drills and tornado drills and they taught us, crouch down and cover your head. And I remember we would have these routine drills and I really believed that a tornado was going to come.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Grand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is October 7th. It's a Tuesday. You know what that means, John?
What does it mean, Brad?
So happy it's Tuesday. S-H-I, you know what. So happy it's Tuesday.
Interesting.
Okay, first off, we may have some technical glitches ahead. We have, I guess, a power glitch or something this morning because some of the computers were sort of funky. You had trouble with streaming earlier, and streaming should be up and going right now, correct?
That's correct. I did check it, thankfully.
Okay, we mentioned the date because of the fact that we do the show. We do the show live between 7 and 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Pretty soon we're in daylight savings time right now. We're going back into Central Standard Time. Anyway, I mentioned the date because of the fact that when you listen to it in the future on bjshow.co or bjshow.us, you may not know what we're talking about as far as date-wise concerned, so now you know it's October 7th. And John, I have a Jonathan Bosch, Michael Burton update, okay? And Scott Fawn will be happy about this. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yesterday, we had a quick meeting of the Brad and John partnership with the BJ Show, and we voted to not have Michael Burton back on the show, even though he did flake on us on Friday, correct?
Yeah, we're moving on from that whole drama. You're right, Brad.
And on the air live, I texted him, sorry, Michael. John said no. John also said you missed your chance. Last night at 9:41 p.m., Mr. Burton said, strange, but no worries. So, of course.
Michael, you are strange, and we have no worries. And I'm so glad, Brad, that after helping to improve and setting a model for how you can handle bumbling, incompetent, hungover candidates, and also anyone who engages in Hoosier behavior at a campaign office, I'm glad we could educate folks on behavior and move on, Brad. I'm glad that we're moving on today.
John, but I did have to reply back to him. So
yeah, and what'd he say? What'd you say?
I said, it's a strange show, like no other. Someday when we grow up, we want to be like Mark Cox, Tim Jones, Vic Porcelli, and Hugh Janus, but we have a long way to go. So
that's funny, Brad. That puts a good bow on that whole drama.
Oh, and the video's up the whole bit so they can find that. Okay.
I did, and Brad, I fixed, by the way, I love the fact that you think so little of Jonathan Bosch that you spelled his name wrong. I think that's a subtle dig. Some would say it's your lack of attention to detail.
Well, hold it.
But I say no, Brad's just being subtle.
No. What's the proper spelling?
Jonathan.
What did I put?
Jonathan.
Oh, I meant Jonathan. That's what I meant, Jonathan.
Yeah, you did. All right, let's get into the top three, Brad. Good
okay.
idea.
Every single day, John puts together this list of all the important stuff. We start the show off with this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And John cons down his top three of dozens of things that are on his website. And we start off with...
In third place...
Life's a game, but it's not fair. I break the rules, so I don't care. That was Rihanna and Jay-Z's Run This Town, circa 2009. The rules generally in A-Block are that I pull stories from johncombest.com. But today I'll cite a story that's a story of local interest, not on johncombest.com, but one that we've discussed on the show last week and the week prior. The headline from Lucretia Wembley of St. Louis Public Radio. Advocates call for bias training after racist graffiti at Francis Howell High School. A press conference took place on Monday. That's yesterday. St. Charles County Courthouse. Yes, indeed. You had the executive director and the founder of the Missouri Equity Education Partnership a.k.a. Meep. Heather Fleming was there, along with the leader of Francis Howell Forward. You know, Forward, that's the progressive group. Francis Howell Families is the conservative group, and Francis Howell Forward is the progressive group. Their leader is Jamie Martin, a progressive action committee. That's what Francis Howell Forward is. And they both came together to say, we need to fix the Francis Howell School District. Now, here's what Miss Fleming says. She's from Meep. Students who look like my child were targeted. And that is very concerning. Brad, it's not just concerning. It's very concerning. Because we pay taxes, debatable, and we send our children to school each day wanting their safety, wanting them to have the ability to learn, and to have a high-quality education. This is not only a distraction, it is a threat. It is traumatizing. So, if you'll recall, Brad, a horrible tragedy took place a few weeks ago, and in which a 25-year-old janitor used a dry erase marker and wrote some terrible things. He wrote naughty words in foreign language classrooms. He took some chemicals and he destroyed items in a janitor's closet. And then he also took that dry erase marker and he wrote racist, offensive stuff in a bathroom. Now, I don't know if Francis Howell is going to be able to recover from this, but Miss Fleming has some ideas, and it involves discrimination training. Not training to be better at discriminating, but learning to fight bias, learning to fight racism. Brad, I went to the Missouri Equity Education Partnership website, and they have one of their gimmicks, I guess you could say, is that they rank school board candidates. They're kind of like Mark Cox. You referenced Mark Cox earlier. And they divide candidates into pro-equity and anti-equity. So I guess the point of this whole press conference, alongside Francis Howell Forward, is listen to us, stand up for more training, or you might be ruled anti-equity, okay?
You know, I have a feeling. You know the crazy story with our state senator, Ricky Schroeder. What's his name again, John?
Senator Nick Schroer.
I get a feeling if this crap goes on much longer in Francis Howell, he's going to move back into that old lady's basement, and his kids are going to move in with him so they can go back to Fort Zumwalt. What do you think, John?
Oh, that's pretty funny. I love how once a quarter you can dust off some anecdote from Bernie Dubray that you weren't supposed to share publicly and take a little shot at Nick Schroer.
No, I didn't. That's nothing that from Bernie Dubray. The story was all over.
I'm pretty sure you said it was from me. If I'm wrong there, Brad.
John, it was all over the news. Matter of fact, it was to the point where...
No, but you said that Bernie Dubray told you, and you said, oh, I probably shouldn't mention this on the air. But one time he told me, that story's BS.
No. It was common knowledge because that was the whole deal. That was the deal behind the fact that he bought a new house down in Defiance.
Yep. You've explained it before on the show. But your point was that somebody who totally knows the situation told you that Nick was lying.
No, it was the point was, the whole crazy thing was, he claimed that his family lived in the new house down in Defiance, and he lived in the lady's basement because his official residence for his wife and kids was in Defiance, so they could go to Francis Howell, but he still had to retain residency in O'Fallon to keep
everybody's tracking with you.
Right. So in other words, it had nothing to do at that point in time, and the reason he did that was because he claimed that the Fort Zumwalt School District did not have the proper program for his kid, or I don't know, it was a weird story. And
as we've never discussed ever once on the show, when I once tweeted a link out, as I do, we have a one-man promotions team for this show. And as I once tweeted a link out to a segment, I included Nick out of courtesy because you had been talking about him. And as Nick replied to me when I mentioned that Brad Hildebrand criticized him, Nick said, who? Brad, I think it's time for number 2.
Well, you know what?
What's that, Brad?
See, you can tell he's a longtime fan of mine because you know why?
Why is that?
My very first job on the air at KSLQ, being the producer for for Lee Ford. Lee called me Brad Who. So Nick.
Oh, there you go.
No,
he's a longtime fan. I love that.
He's a longtime fan. He knows trivia about me that nobody else knows. Nick, dude, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Okay, now for number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
We'll go across Highway 70, I-70 to Kansas City. Governor Mike Kehoe on Pete Mundo's show, Pete Mundo in the Morning. He talked about the National Guard. And we've covered that before, Brad. You know, the fact that National Guard officers will be working with ICE, but doing backroom stuff, like essentially back end stuff. I said backroom. No, back end stuff, you know, helping them process some of the illegal alien paperwork and such, not providing security, but just doing some back end stuff to support the ICE folks that are in Kansas City. You know, Pete also asked about the Royals and the Chiefs, and if progress has been made. And Kehoe said, I love this because Pete says, would you say that progress has been north of the river versus south of the river? And this is in terms of keeping the Royals on the Missouri side of the state line. And Kehoe gave a great political answer, which is, I'd say we've had great progress keeping them on the Missouri side. And Pete said, all right, that's fair enough. So this continues, Brad. And what the sense I get from listening to Pete's show, because Pete obviously has a million sources in Kansas City and hears a lot of things, is that the Royals are getting much closer to a decision about their future. Maybe not quite the Chiefs yet, but the Royals are getting closer. So there's more chatter about that. And of course, Kehoe says that he feels confident that they'll, you know, make a decision and stay on the Missouri side. But as Pete notes, he's had guests on his show from Kansas that seem quite confident that the Royals are thinking of moving. And just as a final note on this, Kehoe points out, hey, as a longtime business guy, I know it's always easier to keep a business by nature than it is to lure one away. So that's just another proof point of why Kehoe feels confident about keeping the Royals here and, in fact, keeping the Chiefs here as well.
I think he's wrong. I think they're going to both end up in Kansas. I really do. And quite honestly, if I were the Chiefs or the Royals, I would take the Kansas money and run because of the fact that I think there's too many strings attached to the Missouri money, to be quite honest with you. I mean,
you would say maybe Kehoe might say there's too much accountability. That's another way to look at it. Like there would be penalties if they did something wrong, right?
You know, there's an interesting story that Mike Kehoe might be able to talk about because he talked about as a former business person. Do you know that at one point in time, Dave Sinclair Ford, and if you know the history of Dave Sinclair used to be a city cop. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah. You talked about him many times on the show.
Okay, he was a city cop, and originally the Dave Sinclair Ford dealership was in South City, not in South County that you don't like, but it was in South City. Did you know that part of the story?
I did not know that, Brad. That's a new factoid.
And at one point in time, and this happens quite often with the with the car dealerships, the manufacturers may say, you know what, you need to upgrade your dealership and you need to move. And Dave Sinclair was told that if he did not move his dealership close to an interstate highway, that the Ford Motor Company was going to take his franchise away and he would not be able to sell Fords anymore. So he bought the place down there at Lindbergh and Lee Ferry, which you went for your blood test a couple weeks ago. And the idea being is he started new in South County. So you would think, and I have a feeling that Mike Kehoe, when he originally started working for Dave Sinclair, actually worked at the dealership in South City, not the one in South County. So Mike Kehoe, more than anybody would know, when the authorities, and I say in this case, I say the NFL is wink, wink, nod, nodding at both, the NFL and the MLB are both wink, wink, nod, nodding at the Chiefs and the Royals. Hey, you know, that Kansas State deal sounds pretty attractive. They're going to give you.
You think so?
Oh yes, I think because the thing about this is, This is the NFL. They want new Taj Mahals, especially the NFL. Why do you think there was the kabuki went on here in St. Louis? Because we were going to build them a brand new stadium, but it wasn't the big, fancy, monstrous $3 billion SoFi stadium that ultimately Steve Kroenke built in Los Angeles. I'm telling you, they're gone. See,
Steve Kroenke is also Stan Kroenke's little brother.
Stan Kroenke, I'm sorry. Okay, do you know who he's really named after? Do you know the story with Stan Kroenke?
Is he named after Stan Musial?
And his middle name is Stanley. Maybe
Stanley Shane Dean Kroenke.
No, his middle name is another baseball player, something like that. Okay,
is it really? Is he really named after St. Louis baseball heroes?
Oh yeah. I'm telling you, I've looked that up before. Okay, I'm telling you, the Royals and the Chiefs are gone. I mean, it's just John, I'm the guy that back in 2012 was telling people, hey, the Rams are leaving St. Louis. People, they'll never leave St. Louis.
You had inside information, Brad. You were operating on a little inside information there.
John, I'm going to break the story right now. I have inside information on this. The Chiefs and the Royals are moving to Kansas City. And the other interesting thing was you said talking about north and south of the Missouri River, which is sort of curious because of the fact that if you know the geography of Kansas City, the Mississippi runs north and south until it hits Kansas City. Then it runs east and west. So when he's saying north or south of Missouri, the technical thing is what he should be saying is east or west of the Missouri because of the fact that they're moving into Kansas, which would be, and where the location is essentially to the northwest of Kansas City downtown, which means they would be moving to the west of the Missouri. See what I'm saying?
I think you should partner with that black group in St. Charles County for an education program, and it could be on discrimination and geography and river geography.
There's something about that Missouri River because one of the boundaries of the Francis Howell School District is the Missouri River, John. So there's something about that Missouri River. Okay, you ready for number one?
Yeah, let's do it.
The number one.
Right down I-44. We're going to go down another major highway, not I-70 this time, but I-44. Elijah Haahr had State Representative Bill Hardwick on. And Bill Hardwick is responsible for a couple different versions of controversial Missouri legislation. One of them is version 1.0. One of them is version 2.0. Brad, have you heard of SAPA before?
Hold on a minute. You caught me drinking my Mountain Dew. SAFA, S-A-F-F-A?
SAPA. I think you're pretty familiar because we've discussed it many times, Brad. You know what SAPA is?
I do. Okay. I do know what that is.
The Second Amendment Preservation Act, right?
Right.
And it was in the news yesterday. Elijah's so good at this because he's very timely. You had the U.S. Supreme Court said they would not be taking up an appeal of a lower court ruling that said that SAPA, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, would not go into effect. And you'll remember the at least mainstream debate about this was that the original legislation, and I want to make sure I get this right, said that Missouri law enforcement officials would not be responsible for enforcing federal law if that federal law was in conflict with Missouri law as it related to guns. And of course, progressives, and to be fair, some libertarians and even some Republicans to an extent, said that this violated the U.S. Supremacy Clause, the idea that a federal law will outweigh or supersede a state law. So the short of it, and Elijah and Bill did a good job explaining this. They're both attorneys. However, surprisingly, they're both human and are able to talk in English language terms. They explained the fact that the original version of SAPA, or SAPA, however you want to describe it, had essentially a preamble that said, we find all this other stuff to be invalid. We find all this stuff. We disagree with all this stuff. And the courts were able to use that flowery language, kind of that flowery preamble to say, whoa. All this stuff at the beginning of the law is actually wrong, so we're going to strike down the law. So as Elijah and Bill explained on the show, the new version, SAPA 2.0, gets rid of all that flowery language, that progressives and anti-gun types and some courts said was unnecessary and was actually invalid, and it just gets straight to the heart of the matter. Now, let's get down to proverbial brass tacks here. This legislation, Mr. Hardwick's legislation, made it through the House last year, but it stalled in the Senate at the end because, there was a bunch of hubbub and PQs and all these machinations in the Senate. So I would expect this bill will come back in 2026. It is an election year, so you're going to have a lot of Republicans that want to prove their chops about it. And Democrats love these issues because they're able to say, hey, there go the Republicans trying to put more guns on our streets. So if you want, excuse me, a plain language explanation of what was wrong with the original SAPA, and what's right about 2.0, go listen to Elijah's show.
Okay, John, question for you, and I'm not being funny when I ask this question. Wasn't this the bill championed by the Freedom Caucus?
I'm sure it's one of the bills that they supported, sure.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a big controversy about this, which centered around St. Charles County, specifically O'Fallon. There was something in this law that stated that if a police officer were to confiscate a gun, that they could be sued civilly for like $50,000.
You're exactly right. And Bill Hardwick talks about that during this interview. Yeah, about and I don't mean to interrupt your point, Brad, but Hardwick's point is at some point you have to have consequences for violating the Constitution. And Bill points out, he says that he's supportive of law enforcement, but you have to have some teeth to this law. Go ahead.
Well, I believe, and checking my memory banks, which are not as good as they used to be, but I think I mentioned O'Fallon. I believe the chief of police of O'Fallon quit over this. Is it something? Do you remember this at all? Does this?
I don't remember him quitting, but that's entirely possible that it happened.
I believe,
but it didn't. I mean, it didn't. It's not like the day-to-day consequences of this forced him to quit. It seems like it would seem like he quit because he said, if this actually goes into effect, I don't want to be held responsible.
Well, he was saying that this put police officers in a tremendous liability situation, that essentially if they were to go to one law and confiscate a gun, the SAPA, whatever you want to call it, can come back and say, hold on a minute now, you confiscated a gun, we're coming after you, we're fining you $50,000 personally. It wasn't a department thing. They were like piercing the veil of protection of the police officers that perform their duties. Get what I'm saying? So in other words,
you're right, Brad. I know we're over time here, but a headline from 2021. Suburban St. Louis police chief resigns over new gun law.
Yes.
You were right, Brad.
Yes, and that was the deal because he was upset because he said, I'm out of here because that law to me makes it to the point where our officers are in a tremendously bad situation because on one hand, we're enforcing one law, but then on the other hand, we can get one of our officers or all of our officers sued because of the fact that we're enforcing this other law, which is, it's just crazy stuff. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, man, in fact, we should call Bill Eigel and see. I believe his fingerprints were on this thing. I believe this was a Freedom Caucus deal. I'm almost positive this was a Freedom Caucus deal.
Did you dust for fingerprints, Brad, or are you just taking it at face value that his fingerprints are all over it?
I've got a new laser fingerprint detector, and I can just point the laser beam, and it's sort of like the automated license plate readers. It's the same kind of thing. I just point my laser at a fingerprint, and it'll say it'll just say Freedom Caucus. Freedom Caucus Bill Eigel. Okay, we got it. Okay, John, coming up next, I have a question for you. Actually, I have two questions for you. Two of my top three are questions that I need John to help me with because
I'll do my very best, Brad.
I don't know the answers, and John will. Hey, not patting myself on the back.
Hey,
go
ahead, Brad.
How about me remembering that stuff about the SAPA thing? And you didn't think I even remembered that.
Very good, Brad. It's common in Alzheimer's patients to remember stuff from earlier years and not remember what they did yesterday. So I won't ask you what you did yesterday.
Who are you again?
My name is Shelley Barr.
Oh, Shelley. Oh, so this is the BS show? Is that what this is?
This is definitely the BS show, Brad.
And hold on. Somebody just came in the studio and they're punching me. Oh, it's Michael Burton.